thrilled and invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion.
In today's breaking news, Sam Bankman-Fried, the fallen crypto mogul, has been convicted of all 7 counts of fraud. As you will recall, Sam Bankman-Fried, whose FTX cryptocurrency exchange collapsed last year after being valued at more than $32 billion, he was accused of using the firm as his personal piggy bank, and prosecutors said he orchestrated a scheme to steal as much as $10 billion from the users of that exchange. He, of course, says he will appeal the convictions today, but he now faces 110 years in prison. And Secretary of State Anthony Blinken will urge the Israeli government to agree to a series of brief cessations of military operations in Gaza to allow for hostages to be released safely and for humanitarian aid to be distributed. This message comes as President Joe Biden revealed yesterday that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel had previously agreed to halt shelling. He did that briefly on October 20th to allow for the release of 2 American hostages. The Gaza Health Ministry said today that more than 1,000 people had been injured or killed, and some were actually missing as a result of Israeli airstrikes that have been pretty intense this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and another strike that happened this morning on Thursday. The Gaza Health Ministry says the strike this morning actually hit a school and injured several people. Now, these figures from the ministry are part of the Hamas-run government, and the U.S. is reporting that they cannot be verified independently, but hospital officials in the area have reported dozens of people killed or at least wounded. And a Democratic pro-Israeli group today is beginning to air television ads that criticize Representative Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, in the first attempt to hit back on the airways at the growing caucus of Israel skeptics within the Democratic Party. The ad from the group Democratic Majority for Israel comes as President Biden and other Democrats face a backlash from the left for their stalwart support of Israel as it bombs and invades the Gaza Strip. Former President Donald Trump's 2 eldest sons took the stand today in a Manhattan courtroom. Now, this is in the civil fraud case against them and their father that threatens the entire family business. Today, Donald Trump Jr. was calm but defensive, seeking to blame accountants for errors on financial statements that a judge has already found were fraudulent, and statements that Donald Trump Jr. himself signed attesting to the fact that the information contained in these forms were accurate. His younger brother, Eric Trump, who was more involved with the day-to-day aspects of the Trump organization, was more combative. He acknowledged his place at the center of the business, but denied involvement in the financial statements. He got very defensive as prosecutors pushed him on his knowledge of the accounting documents. Agents from the FBI this morning searched the Brooklyn home of Mayor Eric Adams. This is New York Mayor Eric Adams' chief fundraiser, 25-year-old Brianna Suggs. She is a campaign consultant who is deeply entwined with efforts to advance Mayor Adams' agenda. The raid prompted Mayor Adams to abruptly cancel several meetings scheduled in Washington, D.C. this morning. In fact, he was midair and was tweeting about the fact that he was headed to Washington to address the immigrant crisis in D.C. when he had to literally turn around and return to New York City to address the raid on Brianna Suggs' home. And Senate Democrats, they're trying a novel strategy to break Senator Tommy Tuberville's blockade of senior military promotions as pressure builds among his fellow Republicans and Defense Department officials to end his months-long hold in protest of the Pentagon's abortion access policies. And Desmond Mills Jr., he's one of 5 former Memphis police officers. He was charged in connection with the brutal beating and death of Tyree Nichols earlier this year. Mills pled guilty in a federal court today to 2 felony charges of obstruction of justice and use of excessive force. Now, he is the first of 5 officers indicted on federal charges by a grand jury just this September. He's the first to plead guilty. And as a part of this plea deal, Mills will cooperate with the separate state cases against the other officers that includes charges of second-degree murder. Now, this guilty plea by Mills could prompt the other 4 officers who've been charged in both the federal and state court to also try to seek deals with the prosecution to avoid lengthy jail time. We know that the prosecutors, in exchange for the guilty plea by Mills, is recommending that he serve only 15 years in prison. And in-person early voting begins today for voters in Kentucky. It's going to be a big showdown between Democratic incumbent Governor Andy Beshear, who is leading his Republican challenger, the Republican Attorney General Daniel Cameron. Some folks see this race as a bellwether as to whether Democrats will continue to dominate races by centering the issue of abortion and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And a divided House today passed a Republican written bill that would provide $14.3 billion in military aid to Israel for its war with Hamas, but tied to the bill is substantial cuts or equal amount of cuts to the IRS. And those cuts would threaten Joe Biden's signature piece of legislation. Now, Joe Biden has promised that he would veto any bill that tries to tie support to Israel with reduction in any of our domestic budgets. And Chuck Schumer in the Senate said that the bill passed by the Republicans today that doesn't provide aid for the Ukraine and that ties aid to Israel to a reduction in the budget to the IRS is dead on arrival. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we dig a little deeper, where we go behind the headlines, where we bring you those stories that have people talking. And in this hour today, we're talking about this false narrative that's being disseminated by GOP, by Republicans, by the right-wing media. This narrative that somehow the southern borders are open and that Joe Biden has just abandoned all of U.S. immigration policies, whether it's the Republicans on the debate stage who are trying to become the nominee for president, or the conservative media like Fox News. You can hear this language used over and over and over again, that the borders are open or that we have a border crisis. Now, the reality is these statements, these comments are gross exaggerations. In fact, the Biden administration's policies around immigration and entry into the U.S. are relatively restrictive when compared to past presidential administrations. But this resurgence, this reliance on the border crisis narrative remains so popular amongst the MAGA crowd and amongst even those that consider themselves fairly moderate Republicans. In this hour, we're going to talk to an expert about why this narrative has so much resonance with the Republican Party and what the Democrats should do to make sure that the American people understand what's really happening at the border. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
We are talking about in this hour the narrative used by GOP elected officials, by some in the base, and definitely in the media that supports many of the right-wing elected officials and extremists that we see in the GOP party. Dr. Guadalupe Correa is here. She's a professor of policy and government at George Mason University. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Cabrera. I want to start by just asking you, what is the real situation at the southern border? Because we hear this narrative that's disseminated by Republicans about the borders being wide open and Joe Biden's immigration policies are so lax, as if literally there aren't any policies, and that there is a crisis at the border. And we see they use that to campaign on. They use that to whip up fear in their base. And oftentimes, many of these statements are false. So give us a synopsis of what is actually happening at the border.
Absolutely. I mean, this narrative that has been manufactured, because when I talk about manufactured, it's because the situation that's being described by politicians that are connected with the Republican Party mainly, saying that we have open borders, the catch and release policy, and the fact that this administration has a policy to accept everybody, and this represents a threat and for this nation, and that this is a risk for national security, that drugs, people, and terrorism, because also they are connecting what is happening in the Middle East with the border. This is not only about immigration. They are, and this is not new either. So we have to understand that this is historical, that in the past 2 decades, particularly since, more than 2 decades, since the 1990s, Operation Gatekeeper and Operation Hold the Line took place in 1994 because of this narrative, putting attention on irregular, undocumented, and at that time, so-called illegal immigration, that was putting a stress on the United States economy, when that's not either true. Undocumented migrants, unskilled labor coming from Mexico, from Central America, from other countries of the developing world, of the global South, are needed in the United States. Anyway, in the 1990s, that was a very important strategy. First, of the Republican Party in the state of California. And that was reproduced by Bill Clinton at the same time in the 1990s, 1994, to contrast and because they saw that the Republicans were very successful in the state of California. So Bill Clinton had this, reproduced a narrative. But at the same time, the Republicans understood that this was very profitable as an electoral platform. And in September, in 2001, after September 11 and the years after that, the war on terror, first immigration, the terrorism connected with immigration. And after that, the violence that Mexico led because of the Merida Initiative, drug trafficking and drug violence that was taking place in Mexico was connected with one thing. A human being coming from the southern border, from different places of the south of the continent, particularly Mexico first, then Central America, that represented all fears of Americans. A person that was going to steal the jobs, terrorist, a person that was linked to a terrorist group, and a person that was bringing with him or her drugs in a backpack or with him or her, which is something that is connected with enforcing the border or focusing on the border. And that reached that was not new, and it was connected, and several voices were mentioning it, and particularly the Republican Party. They run with that platform. However, in very recently, year 2016, the campaign, Donald Trump in the primary and Build the Wall, connecting this fear with the necessity of building a wall. So who is coming from the southern border? Then a Mexican that represented everything, a threat to take the jobs from American people, a person connected with the cartels, a person who was bringing drugs and violence to the United States. And it was just so successful. That was the first time that Mexico at the border occupied a central place in the narrative of a politician at the national level. 2016 was so profitable, that campaign, that campaign was reproduced by what I now call Trumpism, with or without Trump. The mainstream of the Republican Party is connected with that idea that there is a need to build a wall, to focus on the border, to deal with everything that Americans fear, which has to do with their jobs, with the fact that the United States economy has not done well, that the American dream is over, and it has to do with undocumented, irregular immigration. But that's not true. Technology and a model that has benefited an elite, that has been put, and who's supposedly the person to fear, an immigrant that's going to bring drugs, that's going to bring violence, and that's going to bring terror to the American people. First of all, terrorism, and today also the main members of the Republican Party, presidential candidates, and the key leaders are talking about Hamas being linked to the Mexican cartels. And not only that, all of this is connected. It's not only about immigration. It's about focusing on the border, declaring a war on cartels, intervening militarily in Mexico because Mexicans cannot deal with the bad hombres. Donald Trump did the same thing during the campaign and during his presidency. And it really generated fear among his base of support. And that was very profitable and maintained this base of support that stays there because of fear. So today, this has been reproduced by the governor of Texas, for example, the governor of Florida. They're talking about states or cities that they consider free for undocumented or irregular migrants. Sanctuary cities, which is an idea that people believe that are places where immigration laws are not existent. And that is not true. And another thing is that immigration is a federal issue. And governors of states or local or state authorities do not have to deal with that. There is a process for asylum seekers to enter to the United States. Of course, the Biden administration has put in place different policies to make undocumented immigration more organized through, different policies. They have maintained policies until a time that they are not needed. For example, in the migration protection protocols of the Trump administration, at some point, that was eliminated. And that was a process that went through the courts. The same thing with Title 42. Title 42 ended in April of this year. And then CP1, which is an application that makes the process of applying for asylum more organized, and people now can enter through the formal checkpoints, and they apply for asylum. Applying for asylum in the United States is legal. It's not
right. Let me say for a minute, Professor Cabrera, and ask you: at the heart of this, is this just plain old racism? This stoking of fears, this painting these individuals as drug dealers, as murderers, as thieves, as violent. What's underneath this? There has to be something that's motivating this, because I was looking at a poll that said 78% of Republicans are likely to see immigration as a threat to U.S. interests, as opposed to only 19% of Democrats. And I'm not suggesting that, Republicans, I don't know, if you're going to use the word racism, I'm sure there's racism in the Democratic Party. There are racists in the Democratic Party, just like the Republican Party. But what is underneath this, and why does the painting of these people as criminals resonate so much with Republicans?
There's somewhat of xenophobia, racism, and the play of these sentiments. It's like utilizing the sentiments to generate fear. It's the politics of fear that in the
right. But why does it generate fear? 78% of Republicans, but only 19% of Democrats. So that means 80% of Democrats are like, oh, we're not thinking about that. That's not real. We're not afraid when we hear it.
Because that's the narrative, the electoral platform is based on that. It's based on a fear of the other coming from the South, a person that is brown, that comes from Mexico, from Central America, from other countries of different parts of the global South, even the African continent, coming from Mexico, because this is a way that, because there are no legal pathways, but it's playing with all the fears of Americans, incorporating this xenophobia and racism of a political class and electoral base, that where prejudice, racism, and sentiments have been connected through a number of messages. It's very complex and psychological, the way that election, the ones that make this as an electoral platform, those that play with this have been very savvy to play with all the fears. But in the back of this, I am totally sure that has to do with racism. And we can talk about this later on, because there are some elements where people coming from other parts of the world have not received.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what about, like, Ukrainians and people, Russians and others that aren't brown, don't have brown skin? Do we see that same kind of those same kinds of attacks and characterizations of those individuals? Even people who come in the country from Asian countries, from European countries, we have not heard again the same types of vitriol, and there doesn't seem to even be the same level of focus on those immigrants that come into the U.S. as we focus on those that are coming from, places like Mexico and Central America. When we come forward, I want to talk about this notion again that somehow this isn't about racism. It's about our security, and it's about preserving our jobs. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though?
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, Your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite.
We are back, and in this hour, we're talking to Dr. Guadalupe Correa. She's a professor of policy and government at George Mason University. We're talking about this false narrative that has been pushed for decades by the GOP about the border, how they malign and characterize individuals coming across the border as murderers, as rapists, as violent thugs. And Professor Cabrera, we don't see those same characterizations used when we're talking about European and other immigrants. So speak to that, and also this notion that somehow it's the immigrant population that's taking these great jobs away from Americans, which I always find to be just laughable because right now, most American companies can't find enough workers. There's a worker shortage. If you talk to folks, whether you're in the fast food industry, the trucking business or whatever, the construction business, there is a shortage. So how did this narrative take root that somehow jobs are being threatened by immigrants coming into this country?
Right, thank you. Yes, definitely. Let's start with the first question about the differentiated treatment of people coming from developing nations of this hemisphere, particularly those from poor countries, from Mexico, from Central American countries, Venezuela, and other countries that are considered inferior, probably, if we compare them to people from richer countries, that are white, like people from Ukraine or people from Russia, for example. The war in Ukraine has pushed the United States government to have a different treatment and a different policy towards asylum seekers from Ukraine. But what happened with Russians during the exceptions of Title 42, for example, and this was there was a very interesting story by the Associated Press signed by Elliot Spagat on December 16, 2022, late last year. And there was there was no reason, or there was nothing that allowed us to understand the criteria. The story was titled "Russians Find Asylum Lifeline to United States, but at a High Price," which means that the reporter didn't find why more Russians than any other nationality at that time. When he did the reporting, Russians were entering as part of the exceptions, and we don't know what are the criteria. What were the criteria then to accept more Russians than any other nationalities? And that what came absolutely at a high price for them too, because they had to pay migrant smugglers, hotels, and infrastructure at the border at the same time. But they knew that they were going to get in, and we don't know why. They were allowed to get in as an exception to Title 42. So I think that racism is not just something that pertains to one party, but it has been used more by the Republican Party. And people from Europe or from rich countries or from rich Asian countries are not treated equally, because poverty and the color of skin of people is just something that sometimes makes authorities and electorals to criminalize them, to present them as something that threatens the United States, when in reality, jobs are needed in different unskilled labor is needed in this country. There are no legal pathways. Comprehensive immigration reform has not been passed. It's a need of the United States. There have been a number of bipartisan efforts to fix the broken immigration system, because the jobs are here. This country needs people to work. And American citizens are not willing to perform many of the activities that unskilled workers coming from south of the border, from Mexico, from Central America, Haiti, Cuba, Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela will do. They will do whatever. They will.
Let me ask you mentioned Venezuelans. We see now that, again, many of the images of New York City and some of these other cities like Chicago, where we're now hearing in Chicago, there's a crisis, the weather's turning cold, there's not enough shelters, there's not enough beds. And there's this, the city mayors, Chicago and New York, said, that the Venezuelan immigrants coming into their cities is overwhelming their city systems, their school districts, their social service systems. How does those images that we're seeing, is seeing those mayors talk about the crisis and blaming the Biden administration, blaming Congress, how does that play into this narrative that there is a crisis at the border?
Well, that's the created crisis. That's a manufactured crisis. This is all a spectacle. We know that a number of these people try to enter through Texas, and the Texas governor or the governor of Florida, they are busing people from where they entered. When they enter through Texas, they are busing them to Los Angeles, for example, to New York. We know that this is manufactured. So you kind of make these spaces very crowded, and you take a photograph, of course, but this is just temporary.
New York, but the New York mayor says there are 100,000 plus additional people in the city, and they have a right to shelter law, and that makes it mandatory that they provide some housing, some shelter for these individuals. And he says it's breaking the budget of the cities. You're saying that's manufactured?
That's manufactured by their Republican governors. They are busing migrants from when they are entering to these cities that they call But
wait a minute. So if they weren't bused to New York, there'd be 100,000 people in Texas or Florida. So wouldn't they have the same issue?
they would go to where they have to go, where their families are. They would be in Houston. They would be in Florida, in Ohio. They all have their networks. They go where the jobs are, but they are boss. So they are creating the perception that there is a crisis, and they are all processed. They need to be processed into the system. And meanwhile, they find a job, they connect with their families. It looks like as it is a crisis, but it's manufactured. It's only visual, and it's just temporary because these people are going to work. They're not going to stay asking for money. They're going to give. They're going to make America great. They have made America great, but this is just an electoral way to look as if there is, to create the image that there is a crisis, that there is an invasion, that there is a humanitarian. But when they talk about humanitarian crisis at the border, they talk about poor people being a threat to national security of the United States and to the capacity of these cities. But these people are not going directly to look for shelter at New York, for example, or Chicago or Los Angeles. They are taken there with this idea that these cities need to have them because they are sanctuary cities. And I don't understand the understanding that these people are needed where the immigration laws are not, are follow their path. It's not that this cities are sanctuary for undocumented immigration. It's just that there is a path that needs to be followed. If people are coming to the United States applying for asylum, and applying for asylum in the United States is legal, well, there needs to be a process. And of course, immigration and asylum system is broken. There are not enough judges. There is not enough capacity of asylum system to process very rapidly the people because there has not been the spending of this. And it has been the responsibility of Republican and Democratic administrations. It's not something that has to do with Joe Biden, but it's very easy to deal with this or to treat this as a way to attract voters during particular times. In electoral times in the United States, and this is going to be very complicated next year because it's the year of elections.
And when we come forward, I want to talk about, how Democrats should counter this narrative and what is the fix to our broken, if you believe it's broken, immigration system. And what about these claims that Hamas terrorists are sneaking into the country through the southern border, and Donald Trump and other Republican nominees for president are saying they want to shut the border. They want to have loyalty tests. They want to, prevent these alleged Hamas terrorists from entering the country through the southern border. When we come forward, KBLA Talk 1580.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nicordelai Corte, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube.
All right, Professor Cabrera, you are right. We're headed into this election season. Next year is going to be a presidential election, the House election, Senate election. So this issue of the border crisis, the manufactured crisis, is going to be front and center as the campaign platform we know for many, if not all, of the GOP candidates. So how does the Democratic Party, the only 19% that you believe that there is some kind of border crisis, according to this one poll, how do they combat this false narrative?
With information and also denouncing misinformation. These ideas that are not based on evidence, such as the fact that irregular and undocumented migrants are stealing the jobs of Americans and the border is open. I believe that information is extremely important, and misinformation can only be fought against with the truth. The truth is important, and a campaign of information and education of what is really happening at the border. What is happening in the U.S. economy, what to fear and what not. The politics of fear are politics that are based on propaganda and misinformation. Misinformation is only dealt with by the truth. Another thing.
Let me ask you this too. So if you had a magic wand, what would you do? You said Democrats haven't gotten it right. We know Republicans haven't gotten it right, haven't even wanted to address legislation around immigration. What's the fix here?
Well, there are many ways. No. There are many ways. And I mentioned that before. Comprehensive immigration reform. And that's not something that we need to find a new solution. There has been bipartisan efforts, comprehensive immigration reform, 3 decades ago. The first attempts to do this, the Republican members of the Republican Party, Kennedy McCain proposal, the proposal by Barack Obama, the Senate proposal in 2013. This is dealing with the needs of jobs, temporary visas, focusing on employers. If you don't want undocumented migrants, you focus on employers, because employers are also committing illegal. They are doing an illegal activity, but they benefit from paying lower salaries, and they benefit also from not providing their workers with the benefits that they deserve, right? So it's a win-win situation for the U.S. economy, and comprehensive immigration reform take that into account. And unfortunately, there has not been a commitment and the possibility that the legislator this comes forward a big campaign to convince the American public to deal with these in a legal way. Comprehensive immigration reform is crucial. Unfortunately, there has not been the compromise.
Do you think there should be some number, some limits that are set, like every year we should only allow X number of people into this country? Or is that, again, an artificial way to address this issue?
If you read or you analyze the proposals to deal with this, or to fix the broken immigration system, you will know that what are the needs of the U.S. economy? This can be calculated easily. Where do we need workers? So we have to, widen, we have to increase the number of people, the quotas or the number of visas, and provide more temporary visas so people can go back and forth. Temporary visas are important. If not, you're going to have, a number of people that are here, and this is what is happening. People are going to find the way. If you just close a border, if you just place a wall, people are going to come because they are going to be employed. And the employers are the ones that need the workers. This is all a spectacle. And this is all benefiting big capital. This is all benefiting those that can pay lower salaries. Everybody benefits from it.
It's interesting. I would tell you something that I read not too long ago. A restaurant chain in Florida owned by a very successful restaurateur who was a big supporter of Ron DeSantis, Governor Ron DeSantis. He had his restaurants raided, and 19 or so of his employees were deported or detained. He had to pay a huge fine. And because of that, it really wreaked havoc on his restaurant operations. One of these individuals had been with him for years, was a trusted confidant. And it really caused him to change his position and to start to soften on his support of Governor DeSantis started to soften. So to your point that there are some of the same corporate entities that are hiring people who are undocumented and are benefiting from their labor are often the ones supporting financially candidates like Ron DeSantis, who are the biggest advocates for these so-called, walls or stricter immigration policies. So there's a lot of irony and hypocrisy there because this big restaurant chain making, as you said, millions of dollars now can't operate without these people that were the dishwashers, the busboys, doing these, non-skilled labor jobs. And he had been the biggest donor as Ron DeSantis, was making his political career talking tough on immigration.
Absolutely, because this is all, this hypocrisy has to do with economic incentives. They benefit very much by hiring people that are vulnerable, that would say, I would accept a very low salary, no benefits, and you send, the government can send ICE to, the rates that would focus on the older people that have already provided and given the best years of their life to the United States. So this is very convenient. But once they are punished in a way to hire undocumented migrants when they need that labor force, unskilled labor, when they need that, and if they see that affecting their economic interests, this is when they are going to say, yes, we need a comprehensive immigration reform. We're not going to be so hypocritical to further or to, support candidates that would support building walls and not providing legal pathways, because now it's convenient for them. It's convenient for them to do that.
I was in New York recently, a couple of weeks ago, and it's almost funny because if you're out in Central Park or you're out on the Upper West Side, there are all of these Black and brown people, women with accents, obviously not, English isn't their first language, and they're pushing these super expensive baby carriages with white kids in them. So these white mothers and families are hiring these, immigrant, foreign born. I don't know, if they all born in America or not, but, they obviously are not, English is not their first language because I've heard many of them talk. And they are the nannies. They are the babysitters. They're out strolling in Central Park. And these are the same women that oftentimes their husbands in these big corporations are, railing against and supporting candidates like DeSantis and like the governor of Texas and governor of Georgia, et cetera. So the hypocrisy is just really nauseating.
Absolutely. And it's hypocrisy because they benefit from that. If you make a person invisible, People are going to accept whatever. They're going to accept the low salaries, and it's going to benefit, rich people that are hiring undocumented labor because will have no punishment. The same thing with big companies. They hire these other companies that are brokers, and that they are the ones that hire undocumented migrants. So the big companies are not going to be punished for that. They hire the broker and they say, I'm hiring the company. So there is an illicit market. People that are undocumented pay their taxes, because everybody, in order to work in the United States, need to have a social security number. There's a big market, black market, for social security numbers and healthcare insurance. I have seen that. I have seen that in LA, in MacArthur Park. If you go to MacArthur Park looking like me, I'm going to be approached by a number of people like offering, and it's true, I have done it. I've done it.
Offering you a social security card?
And the MICA, they call it MICA, which is like a fake document proving the insurance, healthcare insurance. So, I am going to be with the social security number. I mean, there's a black market, but I am going to pay taxes, or through another type, another form where it's not a social security number, but I'm going to pay tax anyway. So people are paying taxes in order to work. They're going to pay taxes, and there is a big black market. We need to do more research about that, because authorities in this country, they want to look to the other side, and they say, the narrative is like they are not paying taxes. They are paying taxes. They are not receiving pensions. They are not receiving benefits that they would otherwise if they are legal in this country. There are not pathways for them to be legal, and this is kind of a circle.
Well, I am out of time, and I am just such a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Guadalupe Correa, Professor of Policy and Government at George Mason University. Thank you for your advocacy and your work on this issue. And we've got to get louder in terms of countering these false narratives, providing the truth, and calling out this hypocrisy. If you, again, go to New York and go to Central Park and you see all of these little white kids being pushed in these very expensive buggies and carriages by, women of color who are literally raising these little kids. So much to do in this area of immigration reform. Next voice that you hear be Robin Ayers in the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Don't touch that dial. Thank you so much.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public